Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Cup of Joy. I'm your host, Ariana Joy Christie, and I am so glad that you are here. This is a space to inspire, to learn, to grow, and to challenge. Get ready to fill your cup and spread a little joy along the way. Okay, Julie Cole, co-founder of Mabel's Labels, parenting author, and mom of, drumroll please, 6. Holy smokes. Welcome to Your Cup of Joy.
Thank you. Now, I will, yes, there are 6 of them, but I must say, unlike some people, I have my babies one at a time.
Valid, fair, but I think that is just like when I think of 6, I'm like, "Oh my, you're
Yeah.
incredible." And
Yeah, you know what, though? I always say when people are, like, so impressed, I'm like, "Let's just wait and see how they all turn out, shall we, before we get too excited?"
but I've heard some things about your kids. I've seen you make some posts, and I think they're pretty
They're
awesome human
pretty
beings.
okay. They'll
Yeah.
do, they'll do. They're kids like any others, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, you've
Yeah.
done a very, very great job. So I wanna start by saying a little bit about how incredible I think you are. I heard you speak at a Mama Rotary event, like, a while ago. I think I was pregnant with Callie, and that was the first time we really met. And I listened to you and it was like, when you hear something at the right time, like right when you need to hear it, it's exactly what I needed. And one of the things that you said, I was struggling so hard with. I know, like, I'm a control freak. I like things a certain way. I want them to be done a certain way. And if they're not, I don't do so well. So I was having a lot of trouble with my partner being like, okay, if you're going to do something, like, I need you to do it the way that I'm doing it. And I had a very hard time letting go of that. And it was just creating so much tension between us. And in your talk, you said, like, if you are going to count on your partner for something and they're going to take on that role and responsibility, you don't have say over how it's done. They get to
Right.
have control of how that is done. And it just hit me. I was like, I need to let that go. Like, if they eat Kraft dinner one night and they don't get the vegetables I want them to have, they're going to be fine. They have food in their tummy. They have nutrients. They will be okay, you know?
I'm
And I
glad
think
that
that that's
resonated.
okay.
Yeah. I do. I'm really glad that resonated. I think that is something, I'm glad it spoke to you because I do think it's a trap that we get into. And I talk about how, it's almost a self-fulfilled prophecy of we want our partners to be engaged and be helpful, but then, if we criticize them, then they get insecure, so they're not helpful, and then we complain that they're not doing their part. And it's
Totally.
because, and I found myself in the same trap. I'm like, grab the towel. No, not that towel. Get the fluffier towel. Or, oh no, don't dress him in that. And then I just made the decision that I'm only going to comment if their health and safety is actually impacted. So if
Mm,
you dress them funny, I say nothing. If they're, if they've got a little bit of food left on their face, you didn't wash their face, so what? I might just, I'm not going to make a big deal of it because it just doesn't matter. What
mhm.
matters more is that I have a partner who is an engaged parent and feels confident in what they do.
Totally. And what you said about confidence, I think, is the piece that I was missing and didn't understand. Every time I criticized him, he was feeling put down, which
Right.
doesn't encourage him to continue to participate.
Thus the self-fulfilled prophecy, right? We end up
Yeah.
having somebody who's useless because we basically made them useless.
Yes, and he would say to me, like, "I always feel like I'm failing you." And I'm like,
Mm.
"You are." And then I realized, "No, you're not."
You actually are. Let me count the ways. Not to say that they sometimes don't need some corrective guidance.
You know?
But again, it is the health and safety stuff. Like there were times where I'm like, dude, you actually can't take your eye off them. Like
Yes.
you actually like somebody's drinking bleach under the sink. You can't let that happen, right? Like
Yes.
that's where I comment, right? Or like, the toddlers teetering in the top of the cement stairs outside. I'm like, dude,
Yeah, get over there.
yeah, like that I have no problem commenting on.
Yes, and I think that's where, yeah, keeping in mind the health and the safety, but it
Yeah,
was like, getting them dressed. I would redress them to be in something cute, and I'm like, "Who's
right.
even seeing them? Like, does it even
No.
matter?" And maybe
Yeah.
the kids wanna wear that, like, you never know, you
And
know?
it's about
So
picking your battles too. And I always, and especially, with 6, whatever teens and young adults I have now, I'm like, is this the hill I want to die on?
yeah.
Really? Is this really that important? I kind of do the 100 years out thing. Doesn't really matter.
Mm,
But I will say too, Ariana, like I think you have to consider what kind of partner you have because I was having the babies at the same time as a good friend of mine. And her husband honestly was like, he's the best, but he's kind of an absent-minded professor. And it
okay.
was a real worry for her because she's like, he is literally the guy who would put the car seat, like the capsule car seat on top of the car, like you do with your coffee and drive
Yeah,
away.
yeah.
She's like, I live every day knowing that he is capable of, like she went away once, came back and found like a diaper, like a soiled diaper, like that had
Oh,
just been out. She walked to the house and she's like, it stinks. Like he just forgot. So
yeah.
she's dealing with a different level of, probably a neurospicy partner. So you might have to adjust depending on exactly who you're procreating with. And you
Very,
know what?
very fair.
Before you do procreate with somebody, maybe consider all that
Think about
stuff.
these things. It definitely, definitely depends. I will agree
Yeah.
with that. But
Yeah.
I think the same way that we need the confidence as parents, like our
Yeah.
partners do too. And that only comes by doing things and them
That's right.
working out. So,
Who are we to assume our way is the right way anyway? Like,
truthfully,
like we are, and I have to say, I went through this too. And still, like, I have to say, I'm sort of the president of this family. And, I do a lot of the kid stuff. I'd be like the default parent, but this is where I differ. I love being the default parent. Like, I don't care. I don't need the praise. I don't need people being like, you time for a nap. I'm like, I like knowing everything that's going on. So that's my little bit of a control thing. I
yeah,
like I like knowing that stuff. I like kind of being in charge of that. And I like that I have sort of the reins to do that and then I do get supported for my decisions because you know what? Like at the end of the day, I've been at this a while and I'm pretty good at it, right? And so the family learns that they can have confidence in you and that you've got their best interests at heart and stuff. There's lots of things at play.
totally agreed. I
Yeah.
like that you said the president of the family though, because I feel
Yeah.
like there are roles like that.
Yeah.
And when president just sounds so much more like fun. Like I want to be the president, you
Yeah,
know?
be the president
Yeah.
and
Okay.
have a very good vice,
Yes.
a very good vice.
That I love
Yeah,
that actually.
yeah.
So you're an entrepreneur, obviously. And as an entrepreneur myself, um, I find it difficult to have the kids,
Yep.
the family, the relationship, something for myself, and also run my business the way that I want it to go. Sometimes I feel it's a little bit unmanageable. So,
Right.
what are some of the biggest challenges that you found in the early days, especially?
Yeah, there's so much there. I mean, the thing is there is a lot to manage, and
Mm,
the problem is, I think, and I made this mistake of, I left the traditional workforce so that I could, be there for my kids and start Mabel's Labels, and so I wasn't getting help, and I think that was my biggest mistake because I thought, well, why would I get help with my family when the whole point of me leaving the traditional workforce is to be with my family but you just can't do it all. And I think, one of that was probably my biggest struggle was thinking, and again, like I think entrepreneurs and you mentioned the control freak thing. Like entrepreneurs are a little bit that way as well. We want to run our
true.
business a certain way. There is a personality that goes along with it. And also because we want it's on us, man. Like we want our businesses to succeed. And so, yeah, sometimes that means like we're taking calls at weird times or doing meetings at weird or not wanting to not respond to a customer because that customer's our bread and butter and they're gonna like that is what's gonna make our business succeed. So
Yeah.
there are different pressures, particularly in those early days when we're, not paying ourselves, or in my case, like making labels in a basement until 2 a.m. and that sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
think that getting the help is key.
Mm.
Again, too late. I got a full-time nanny when my fifth kid turned one. Three
Oh,
kids too
wow.
late. Yeah, dumb, 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 dumb. So, once that got in place, I was able to be better at everything that I was doing. So I think that would be one thing. I think another thing that's really important is not romanticizing it. I think right now
Mhm.
entrepreneurship is seen as very hot and very cool, and everyone wants to go on, Dragons Den or Shark's Tank and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
they think it's all TED Talks and book deals. And, it really, as you know, it really just looks like a lot of freaking work. And
Mhm.
you're in line for years before you get to do the TED Talk, and so I think managing your own expectations and understanding that what it means is like not putting the kids to bed and pouring a glass of wine and watching Netflix with your partner. It means putting the kids to bed and then, going to the basement or going to your laptop or going wherever and
Mhm.
working. Like I never laid down with my kids at night because I could never risk falling asleep and losing those hours, right?
Yeah.
Because that was when I got so much work done. So you are going to be sort of chronically tired. As you know, especially if you're, raising babies and not getting great sleep anyway. And for me, also one of the things I did, which I was okay with, and of course you have to run your families your way, was that for me to be able to run a business, I really wanted Daddy-O to be very successful at work because I needed him. I mean, he was the cash cow of the family, right? Like
Yeah.
I needed him to turn up at work and perform and
Mhm.
get those raises and get those promotions so that I could continue to not bring in a salary. Like I
Yeah.
left a life as a lawyer. Like I left something I could have made a lot of money at, right?
Totally.
So I didn't want him getting up in the night. I wanted him to go to work fresh every day. And like a lot of people have different opinions about how that works. And I believe in running democratic households and having these conversations with your partner. But in those early days, I just really wanted to get up and I could manage well on very little sleep. So I
Yeah.
want to make sure that he was doing well professionally so that I could continue to follow this trajectory of being an entrepreneur. So knowing yourself that it's not, as romanticized as people think. It means you might
Mhm.
not be able to go on that holiday for a while. It means you might not be able to buy the fancy car. I mean, heck, who wants anything more than a minivan anyway? Am I right?
Literally.
Right. Um, but also managing, I think, another thing in the early days to ensure that you're managing the expectations of your family. So,
Mhm.
does your partner know what this is actually going to look like? If your kids are, older, do they understand what that means? And I remember, having to put boundaries, having to explain to them, going to one of my things was, I'd go to say a hockey game and be like, guys, if you look up from the ice, I'm going to be doing, there's two things I got to do. I have to take one call and I have to reply to one email, but every other time I'm going to be watching you on the ice. And I stuck
Aw,
to it
yeah.
because I didn't want to be that mom who they looked up and I'm always on my phone and I miss their goal or I miss their good pass or I miss them getting hurt.
Yeah.
And actually, most of the time I was on the bench as the trainer. It's just a
Aw.
great way to stay involved. But just setting those expectations and then sticking by them, and then what my kids also learned that at least mom can come to my game, right?
Mhm.
If I was working downtown and on a train for an hour there and back every day, I wouldn't even been able to be there. So they were
Yeah.
very understanding of the times that I had to slip away and take a call during, the apple orchard trip in kindergarten or whatever. But I did find that a lot of tech did provide me with a lot of freedom to do the things that I might not but have been able to do if I was in the traditional workforce. So I think it is about boundaries and managing expectations. And yes, of course, getting help.
Totally. Yeah. I think the support thing is so huge. And I
Yeah.
try to communicate that too, because you're right. Like entrepreneurship or owning your own business or working for yourself is like so glamorized. And I think
Yeah.
it's because people get to see the beauty of it online or in their friends' lives or people that they know, but they don't always see the late nights or the missing of things or not being able to make it
Yeah.
home for dinner. There are things that you compromise in order to be able to have the flexibility elsewhere. So it
Absolutely.
does
And I love
matter.
that you mentioned flexibility because that was one thing that drew me to it. I mean, my
Yeah.
eldest child had just been diagnosed with autism, which is why, I wanted to leave the traditional workforce to be able to advocate for him and do the things that needed to be done. And, I already had a few other kids anyway. It was already a gong show around here. But, so the flexibility was definitely key and it was very valued. But I do try to remind people that flexibility doesn't get your work done for you. So you can
Mhm.
do that play group in the afternoon or go to the park with your mom friends and the kids and whatever, but you will be hovering over your laptop at midnight.
Yes, yes, and
Guaranteed.
sometimes it's that reminder because,
Yeah.
your friends will see you at the mom group and see that you have the flexibility to do that, but not always see the late nights
That's
or
right.
the
When
other
they're
things.
watching Love is Blind, you're
Yeah,
like creating content, right? Like,
literally.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly. But the support is such a huge thing. I have people ask me all the time, "How do you do it all?" And I actually made a post last week of, like, I think it was saying, like, how do you do it all?" And then it was, like, clips of all of the people that support me
Yeah,
or a few of the people that support me. Like, I don't get
yeah.
to do all of it. We have things in place to be able to help us out. And the thing is, making those decisions, I think one of the big things that you said that's so important to me is the communication piece, having the conversations with all of the people that are going to be involved. Yes, my partner, like you said, but also the kids. Like I love that you said that you have that conversation with your kids. Like, I'm going to be looking at my phone for one email and one phone call. And then they know, like, okay, mom is watching me. She is here. Yes, she has to work, but she's doing that so she can be here.
Yeah.
And I think that our kids take so much from that communication, from understanding they're learning values, but they're also learning that they are valuable, that we really do care about them and their opinion. And it just creates this beautiful family life without having to make huge compromises, you know?
For sure, and I think, just, t being transparent with kids and telling them and, like, there are times, where my kids would be like, say today's parent wanted to come and do a photo shoot of us and talk about Mabel's or something, and I'd have one kid be like, "Oh, I don't really feel like being in a photo. I don't feel like getting dressed nicely." And there were times where it's like, "Well, you know what? Like, do you like having a cottage? Like, guess
Yeah,
what? Like, this is something I need from you right now." And I get this whole like kids aren't content and like there's a whole like
yeah.
thing about that, whatever. But sometimes I'm like, you guys, my work is my lifestyle. Like,
Mm.
so if I need you to put on some clean clothes and get in a photo once in a while, I think you can buck up and do that for me.
Yeah.
Like, so I have no problem like giving that directive. Maybe people think I'm a cow for doing that or a bad mom, but I'm like, you have nice things. You have opportunities. Like my kids have gone like to Disney social media moms events. They've gone to Turks and Caicos for free for social media events. They've had a lot of privilege based on the work I do. So
Mm.
sometimes if they have to contribute, yeah, so be it.
I love that, and I think
Yeah.
it's important that the communication is there because, like you said, like, maybe he wouldn't have understood that, like, actually this is important and it's for work versus just like, "Oh, we have to do this for whatever."
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be like, look, I get this is a bit of a drag for you. And you know what? Like sometimes like if there's TV crews here, I don't need that kid to help with that one. If there's a kid who doesn't, like I got enough kids who are like, oh, I'd like to be in it, right? So
So
it's
that's
just
why you
like
had
if they need a
6.
picture of this, I know I got heirs and spares, right?
I love it. That totally makes sense, though, and I think that's an important thing to note is the communication and the support is so, so important. Um, I wanna talk a little bit because you mentioned very briefly there that you were a lawyer. So, I wanna speak to that a bit because even myself, like a lot of people that I talk to, but myself included, there's this pressure of knowing what you wanna do. And like in my mom's time when she was deciding her career, it was like you go into your career, you work that career, that's your life, and then you have your pension or you're done
Right.
working, you retire. And so you have one career for your entire life.
Right.
That is a lot
And for our
of
moms
pressure.
too, remember it was like, are you gonna be a nurse or are you gonna be a teacher?
Literally. Yeah,
Yeah,
like, your
literally.
options are
Yeah.
limited.
Yeah.
Choose wisely.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot of pressure, and I think nowadays, people feel that pressure or feel stuck if they've
Yeah.
already made the decision or been pushed into a decision and they feel like they can't make a move. You call yourself a recovered lawyer, which I absolutely love because that is a highly esteemed job. A lawyer is like a stable, you can have your career, you're gonna do well. It's, I think, a sought after job. And you made a big change. So can you speak a little bit about this, the change that you
Yeah.
made, the decision you made, but also share maybe, um, what kind of motivated that?
Yeah, for sure. The thing that did kind of like kill me with it was that, I did go to school for a long time. That was the thing.
Yeah,
Like, and it was hard. Like,
yeah.
I did a master's degree after my undergrad, and then I went to law school.
Wow,
Like, it was a lot of work. Like, it was 10 years. And then I was
wow.
like, wow, I changed a lot of diapers for somebody who's had 10 years of post secondary education. But you know what? I think that, I did the pivot for a couple reasons. One, along with my partners, we were just like, there's a product missing from the market. People are always like, how do you come up with a good idea? I'm like, find something that pisses you off and fix it. And that's
Yes.
exactly what we did. Right.
Mhm.
And then, of course, motherhood does change you, like especially I had this kid who was neurodivergent, and I suddenly my needs and priorities changed,
Mhm.
and so that was the second sort of catalyst, right? So that's why the pivot happened. But I don't think we should ever regret the things that we did leading up, because you know what, like the training that I did, it has definitely helped in business. You can read a contract, you can write a shareholders agreement, you can send a cease and desist. You have connections in the field. There are
Mhm.
certain things. And also your brain then is trained a certain way. So no matter what background you have, you bring that with you to whatever you do next, and it is valuable. And I think,
Mhm.
like with Mabel's Labels, I started it with my sister and two of our good friends from uni, and, one was a teacher, one was a financial planner, one was a graphics manager. So
Wow.
everybody brought different skills and talents and brains to the table, which very much contributed to our early growth and early success. So I think, everybody does these pivots, and it's not a waste, if you bring what you've learned with
I
you.
love that, actually,
Yeah.
and I think that you're right, like, it's so wild to me, I think, when we're just feeling stuck and we want to do something, but fixing that problem is
Mm,
incredible, and I kind of love that you did it with people that you love too. I wasn't aware that it was 4 of you and friends from
yeah.
uni and your sister, so do
Yeah.
you all still work together?
Yeah, so no, I'm the only one left.
No way.
I'm the only one left because we went through an acquisition about 6 years ago,
Okay.
and everybody kind of moved on and did other things. But I still love what I do at Mabel's. Part of the deal with the acquisition was that I would stay on for a year, and I stayed on for that year, and I loved it. So I've just
Amazing.
stayed on. But it's so interesting about this pivot thing too, because I
Yeah.
think about that with my kids. So I've got like a bunch of kids now, like I got four in university kind of thing, right? Which feels a little bit like this.
Yeah,
So,
talk about 10 years of now you have it times
yeah,
4.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm like, you think diapers are expensive? Wait till you have tuition times more. Start those
Literally.
RESPs, mamas.
Oh my goodness.
But it's funny because when they start stressing, like I had one who started university this year at Western, and he's doing biochemistry. I haven't been able to help him with his homework since he was about 3. Um,
Mm.
and, he was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I feel like I should have some direction. I'm like, dude, you're 17. Like dad did
Yeah.
engineering. He's not like I make labels.
Yeah.
And like, look at you. Like, your job didn't even exist. There are jobs, buddy, by
True.
the time you graduate that don't even exist today. Like,
Yeah.
I think about how many people we have on staff at Mabel's Labels. Like, we've got somebody who's like full time doing like SEO stuff, ad stuff.
Yeah.
Our social media manager, and all of this stuff didn't even exist when I was at uni. I mean, when we started Mabel's Labels, there wasn't even social media.
Totally. That's so
Right?
wild to think, but
So,
yeah.
so much changes. So I don't think for, if you have a young person in your life who's getting stuck about what do I gonna be when I grow up? I mean,
Mhm.
who knows? I mean, we
Yeah.
don't even know what we want to be when we grow up.
And
So
I think it's okay to not know. Like, that's the
exactly.
message that I think is so important is that, yes, there was a time when you had to know and you went to school for that and you did
Yes.
that, but that's not the case necessarily anymore, and
It
it's
isn't.
okay that
Yeah,
it's
and it
not.
is okay. But I do really in saying that, like I do want to also acknowledge a little bit of privilege there, because I do
Mm.
feel like my kids, it was interesting. We were having a conversation. There were a lot of people around, and one of my kids said, "Oh, well, when I've done this degree, I think I might do this degree, or I might," and they were just kind
Mm.
of going on like that. And a friend afterwards, like, "Isn't it funny? Our kids talk like that." Whereas my friend, I've got this friend and her kids have to go, they got to get a trade, or they have to go into nursing. They have to come out with a job.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, just study what you love and it will come. So I just do like to just, take a moment to be like, wow, to be able to study what you love without thinking about a job afterwards is
Mhm.
a little bit of privilege. And it is one that my kids have and I remind them of.
I think that's so important to note, and thank you for saying that because you are right. Like, there is a lot of people do have the
Yeah.
pressure of, "I need to make money to, first
Yes.
of all, pay for this degree
Yeah.
and then also make a living on top." Like, school is costly.
It is. And if you have
So
families to support and, like, say you have a parent who lives with a disability or
mhm,
some mental health stuff, like, there might be the weight of the world on those young shoulders that we don't know about. So, we know
that's
you're out
so
there.
true.
Yeah.
That's very, very true, and
Yeah.
I'm happy that you noted that.
Yeah.
It's also, I think, important to say or highlight what you had mentioned before, that skills are transferable. So sometimes you might go into
Yes.
something and do a degree and think, "Oh, no, like, now I don't wanna do this, and now I have to do a whole other degree." That's not always the case because you're right, you can use those things. I studied, child, youth, and families. I had a minor in psychology. I started a master's in counseling psychology because I thought I wanted to be a therapist.
Right.
Obviously, that's not what I'm doing now, but those skills are so transferable. Like, I use things that I learned in my undergrad every day, even in
Yes.
parenting. Like, of
Well,
course, in
right?
social media, real estate.
You think my negotiation skills haven't come in handy? I
Literally,
feel like I'm in court every day around here.
you pretty much are.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So,
And you've got
yeah,
all
I
those pint-sized dictators you have to navigate.
oh my, and it's like they are so good at it. Sometimes they
So
make an
good.
argument and I'm like, "You're right." Like,
Yeah,
I'm, like, changing
you
my own
win.
mind. It's
I just got
wild.
beat by a 3-year-old.
Yep, it happens more often than not. It is
I
wild.
love it. Yeah, it's a
Um,
trip.
it is truly. So at Mabel's Labels, obviously, I'm a huge fan of Mabel's Labels. I have been using them for years, primarily for daycare, shoes, like, you just have the coolest products. But I'm wondering if you can share a little bit maybe about one of your proudest moments as a co-founder of Mabel's Labels. Is there, like, a profound moment that
Yeah.
stands out to you that you can share with us?
Um, hey, there's been a few. I mean, obviously, things like, winning the Canadian Women Entrepreneur of the Year award, when my book got published, like there's lots of stuff like that. But I really feel like the moment we felt like we arrived was when the last of the four of us quit their day job.
Mm,
So, if suddenly like we were like, wow, we are all sort of making enough.
yeah.
We are able to pay ourselves enough that we don't have to worry about going back to work after this mat leave
Yeah.
and for us that was a real like, all hold hands and go, we did it. So for
It's
some
huge.
reason that moment was pretty special. And
Oh.
and there are lots of things, moving from we started my sister's basement and then we kind of outgrew that and we thought, oh, we should get a big production space. We're like, no, 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 too risky. So we told my sister to buy a bigger house with a bigger basement, and she did. And
Aw.
then we thought we'd be there for 5 years. We only lasted two, and then,
Wow.
we moved to where we are now, which is like a 20,000 square foot facility. And
Huge.
the other real interesting, funny, unexpected source of pride is providing employment to people.
I love
And,
that.
giving women opportunities and creating a corporate culture where, if you want to leave because you want to go to your kids' Christmas concert, you can and film it and tell us about it. And,
Aw.
having that like sort of sludge free zone. Like if your kid's sick, work from home. Like we don't
Yeah.
care. Just get your work done. Like we don't police around that. We don't judge you by your presenteeism. So it feels very like honoring families and it actually is good for our bottom line in a lot of ways, and I'll tell you why. um when you hire people and they like where they work, they're more entrepreneurial, they're more innovative, and they stick around. So I'm not, we're not paying to bring people in, train them, and they leave. Like people stick around because they like it
Yeah.
and they do good work. And that's good because when they're innovative and entrepreneurial and have great ideas and feel and that comes from not micromanaging them too, right?
Mhm.
So there's like lessons in that too. So then you end up doing well, like your business does well. So, I think women leaders, as well, we know women leaders actually run companies that are more philanthropic and more like we just have the stats and all of that.
Yeah.
So it is very, it does feel like an achievement to have created or helped contribute to a community like that. And the other thing that was interesting was When COVID hit and like all these companies are like, oh, we're going to have to get everybody laptops and go online. And how can people work remotely? We were all set up. Like we were
Yeah.
fine. We transitioned right into that, no problem. We
Aw,
didn't skip a beat. So again, that was good for business for us too, because while
totally.
everybody was figuring how they're going to do it, like we had already created, okay, team now, how are we going to create new products that people need? How are we going to, we're like, oh, well, we can make labels, so we can make circular things that say stand 6 feet apart for floors. Like we thought about all those things. And that's because we
True.
had an innovative product development team who was able to pivot because we weren't so busy working out how we're all going to stay connected when we're not in the office.
Yeah, because you already were. That's so
We were already
incredible.
equipped. Yeah.
Today's episode is brought to you by Mabel's Labels, the original waterproof name label for kids. They have a huge range of products that we absolutely love. I have been using them for 3+ years now. They have stickers for your kids' shoes so they know which shoe goes on the right foot. They have a really great push label that just labels all of your kids' clothes. They have all different sizes of stickers for water bottles, backpacks, really anything that you need to label. They have curated packs for things like daycare and school. So you can check them out through the link in the show notes here, and you can use code Julie15 to save. That's right, Julie Cole gave you a discount code so you can save on your Mabel's labels. I hope you love them as much as we do. So incredible. And so I've actually visited Mabel's Labels
You
headquarters,
have.
which it's incredible. Like you guys have an amazing space, obviously an amazing product. But the main thing that I took away from that day was the culture that you have is incredible. And you've obviously had significant growth, starting in a basement, moving to a bigger basement, and then obviously to this headquarters. So you do talk a little bit about how you've created that culture, like giving people flexibility and not micromanaging. But how have you continued to be able to keep that culture strong? Are there certain tips or tricks or things that you can give to other people who are maybe thinking about wanting to create better culture at their space?
Yeah, I would say the one thing that's probably really helpful is to really spend some time understanding creating your core values
Mm,
and knowing what it is that you really, really value. Because once you know that, then it will make decision making easy for you. You can integrate your core values into your interview questions. You can hire and fire by them. They're not just like this thing stuck to the wall. If you really like live by them, then yeah, it does make decision making easier, and and it helps contribute to that culture that you want and what you envision. And for us, like we created this business at unusual times and unusual places. So we knew that we could be highly productive at strange times and in strange places. So surely other people can. And like the fact of the matter is, the workday is very much set to a 1950s standard where men went to work and had a full-time woman at home who was
yeah.
dealing with all of the family issues. That's what this work um, schedule, this work day is based on, and that reality doesn't exist.
Hmm.
So we just thought, well, what would we want to work in? And if you start there and really, like I said, talk to your staff, really understand what those values are and spend some time creating them. It can take a year, get some help with it.
Hmm.
And then just really don't just be, just not just talk, you got to walk the walk as well.
Walk the walk for sure.
Yeah.
I am a huge believer in value-based decision making, and I think
Yes.
that's so great. Like in my personal life, I use that, but to use that in your business, I think is so incredible. And then having alignment in your values, having people who work with you who also value the things that you and your company value. Then when there's alignment, I think it also helps to create
For sure.
productivity culture.
Absolutely. And you know what? I can hire anybody, I can teach anyone to make labels, right? Like,
Yeah.
but, are they going to have the same, sort of compassion? Are they going to be customer focused? Are they going to be innovative thinkers? Are they going to be that? Those are the things that we want brought to the table. That's part of like the heartbeat of the company.
Totally. And I just love that that you say that culture really does impact productivity. When people are happy, you do better. I'm such a believer about that in all areas of life, like business, but also in your personal life. When you're happy, like I do so much more with my time when I'm feeling good than if I'm just feeling like crap, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's you're far more productive. And again, like, I really want to emphasize the retention piece is huge because especially
Totally.
if you're a small business and you might not be able to pay the big salaries, right? Like it
Mhm.
might be tough. But you might be able to say, especially like IT folks, right? Like they love working from home, especially since the pandemic, and they can get their work done, right? So if you
Yeah.
can be like, we're very results focused, and that does help because people be like, okay, if you're starting a company or just starting to hire and you can't afford it, you can be like, but I can offer this, and they might be like,
Mhm.
well, that's worth it to me.
Yeah. And again, based on their values, it may or may not be worth it to them.
That's right. And that's their
Yeah.
decision to make. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. You also share that you mentor young entrepreneurs. That's something that is that you're passionate about. So, is there a piece of advice maybe that you can share with people who are thinking about starting their own business or who maybe have started their own business but want to see growth?
Yeah. A couple of things. I would, the whole your network is your net worth. Like make sure that
Mm,
you are connecting with other entrepreneurs. Make sure that you are in networking groups. Make sure that you get a mentor,
mm.
and if you're getting to the point where I find I learned so much from my mentees. So if you're kind of like
Aw,
past the mentee stage and you want to, roll as a mentor somewhere, then do it because I'm constantly inspired by the young, fresh ideas that people are having. And it's just like the enthusiasm, it just, gets me, keeps me revved up. Right. So
totally.
I would say, yeah, making sure that you're staying connected, because the life of an entrepreneur can be pretty lonely. And I
Mm.
do often find it parallels motherhood in some ways,
I
it
was
c
just gonna say
yeah,
that.
it can be really isolating, right? And,
Yes.
that's why I think, like, when you're a young mom and when you're a new entrepreneur, you need to make sure that you're talking to other moms, you're talking to other
Mm.
entrepreneurs, you're doing that so that you're feeling connected. It's much easier now because we have social media, but also that can
Yeah.
be a toxic place too, so you gotta really curate that, so that you're not, you know, your mental health isn't getting impacted by thinking everybody else is perfect and remembering you're seeing
Yeah.
highlight reels. There's a whole lot to that. But I think making sure that you're staying connected. Again, when we started Mabel's Labels, there was no social media, there were no online
Yeah.
entrepreneur groups. We had to like turn up at networking events and walk into rooms awkwardly and that sort of
Yeah.
thing back in the day, right? But it
Totally.
is it is so important just to remember that and also just mind that mental health because
Mm.
entrepreneurs actually are at higher risk to some struggles
Yeah.
based on their personalities. So just to be aware of that. And I'm having on one of my LinkedIn lives Shulamit, who's the entrepreneur's therapist, and I think she's excellent. So just making sure that you're talking to people and not doing the journey completely alone. I
Yeah.
would also make sure you have a fairly good appetite for risk. If you're a very risk
Yes.
adverse person, it's going to be a hard slog for
Mm.
sure. And also know what you need. So,
Mm.
if you need a lot of me time or if you need to go, if you're that like I need to go and flip through magazines at the coffee shop or get my nails done, that's great. But do not have 6 kids and start a business because that ain't gonna happen. So just know what your needs are, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Take them, take what you need, and there's not one way that's better. I didn't need a lot of traditional me time.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. And if I did, I would have stopped after 2 kids or I would have
Yeah.
not started a business, right? So just know
Totally.
what you need and make sure that you're doing the things so that that cup can get filled.
I think that's such an important message. I also it's so incredible to me how many overlaps there are of motherhood to
Oh,
entrepreneurship in this
right?
conversation when you're talking about, like, not micromanaging your employees, like, well, at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about not micromanaging our partner,
Yeah.
allowing them the freedom to gain the
And our kids,
confidence
we
to
can't
do the task.
micromanage them either, right?
It's so very true.
Yeah,
It's just hitting me how many overlaps there really are in these huge life
it's
lessons.
remarkable.
They're so,
Yeah,
so important. I love that. So, I want to speak a little bit about self care because the reason that I started this podcast was to really promote taking care of yourself, which also we've touched on a little bit in this episode too, is that, you can only give when your cup is also full. You can only give what you have. And so, um, I just want people to be able to show up as a better version of theirself because they
yeah,
have taken a bit of time to fill their cup. And the thing is, I think there's so many myths or misconceptions. Like you were talking about, like sitting at a coffee shop or reading a magazine, getting your nails done. That doesn't have to be self care. You don't need a full day. You can sit and drink a hot coffee for 5 minutes and
yeah.
that can fill your cup. So it's so interesting to me how people answer this question so differently every time. But do you make time for self care? Is this something that you prioritize? And share with us maybe your favorite way to practice self care.
Okay, so I think a really important thing too, and you kind of alluded to it there, was that don't let people project onto you what your self-care should look like.
Yes.
Because I spent a lot of time, look, I'm gonna be honest, when I had little kids and I was in that basement, there wasn't a whole lot of self-care going on in a
Mhm.
traditional sense. But honestly, I see something like this as self-care. Having a conversation with a smart
Yeah.
woman who's an entrepreneur and asks good questions, to me, that fills my cup. So
Mhm.
if you see that as work, then that's not going to fill your cups. To me, this is literally a cup of joy to do
Yeah.
this. So
Thank you for saying that also.
yeah, but yeah, of course, but and so when they were little, like, it would be more things like things that would be almost like self-care that I would really enjoy would be, say, if I went and watched my daughter play hockey and I didn't have to bring a toddler. So I could actually sit and watch her play and not follow a toddler around the arena,
Mhm.
right? So or what I would do sometimes when my kids would be me playing baseball, I would bring a neighborhood like 12-year-old along with me
Aw.
so that she could take them to the park that were within eye distance, but I could sit my butt in the lawn chair and watch the game, and that kid could feel watched. And I mean, I don't want to run around the park anyway. Come on. So,
Yeah.
and like that was $5. I'm like, I'll give you $5 if you come to the park with us. She'd be like,
What a great
great.
idea.
So, I always found little solutions
I
like
love that.
that. And those sorts of things were my my self-care in a way.
Mhm.
Now that's changed as I've gotten older and as they've gotten older. I absolutely, when people say bigger kids, bigger problems, baloney, it's way easier. Let me tell you, Ariana, and everyone listening, this is easy. Like they're grown-ups. Like they don't
Mhm.
do like really stupid. I mean some teenagers do. Mine are pretty good. Like they're not goofy, but
Yeah.
like they're not idiots. But they, and hey, if your teenager's playing up, I know perfectly amazing excellent parents whose kids play up, like it's fine.
Yes.
It's not you. Sometimes we just have feisty ones. But like for
Mhm.
me now, like I do prioritize things like exercise
Yep.
because you know what? For me, I see my mom, and I'm like, how do I want to be when like, for
Yeah.
me, this is an investment in what I'm going to be in 30 years.
Mhm.
So, do I want to be able to be mobile? Do I want to be able to cut my own toenails? Do I want to be able, so I do go to, I probably exercise every day now. And I never
Amazing.
really had that opportunity or that. And honestly, I didn't really have that kind of time. And I was, chasing kids around and we were going to the park and we were like, I felt like I was
Yes.
very physical anyway, just as a lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
But now, I do probably go to the gym every day. I have time to do some things that I never on it. And people say, "Oh, you always have time to do the stuff you want to do," which is true, which is true. Like I get that. And also another thing that really fills my cup and I don't know if it's traditional self-care or what, but like I love going to events, charity events. I love volunteering in the community. I love
Mhm.
getting out there and doing things. I'm an extroverted person, that fills my heart and that gives me
Yeah.
energy. So I do probably that stuff as well, which always feels great.
I love that you're saying that because for me, I'm a very social person. I'm very much like you, where I need to be around people. That fills my cup. And I think the world has told us that self care should be quiet time alone. You should want to read
Right.
a book or be in the bath. Like, I hate baths. And
Same.
I
I've
like
never
reading
had a
books.
bath since I was a
Yeah,
child.
like, why would I wanna do like,
I
no,
know.
that's not for me, and it can be for you, like, it's
Yes,
okay
it
if that's what
can.
you
And
like
no
to do.
judgment. Have your bath. Everybody,
Yes,
take your bath.
yes, but it's so important that to know that, like, there was this message that keeps going around, I keep seeing it, and I saw it a lot in my early postpartum days online where, like, "Don't visit someone postpartum. They
Yeah.
should have alone time. They don't want to host you." I'm like, "Come over to my
Come.
house.
Oh
I
my
do wanna
gosh.
host you, please."
100%. I was
You
like,
know?
same. I'm like, but again, I didn't care if my house was messy or my kids. I'm like, come
Yes,
in, see the baby, hold the baby, bring
yes,
me food, take
yes,
my toddlers to the park. Like, I
yeah,
absolutely, it's so funny. But again, and I think, Ariana, this goes back to that point I was making about don't let other people project on you
yes.
what their needs are. So yes, if you
Mhm.
need that postpartum time and you don't want visitors, you great, don't have them, but don't tell me what I need. And I had that happen to me. Like when I remember somebody bought me like an hour massage when and so I went and I spent the whole hour on the table bored thinking about all the things I could have been doing instead of lying there. But if you need a massage, great, take
Yes.
it. But it
Yeah.
wasn't for me. It
No, and
wasn't
I
for
think
me.
it goes back to values and this value-based decision making, not only in business, but as a human being too. Like I often will have I've had many people say this to me, and I've again, it's one of the things that I see online of this momcation, like you need time away from your kids. And to me, when my mom is like, "Hey, I'm gonna take the kids to the park so you have some time to yourself."
Yeah.
That's the worst. I wanna come to the park with you. Like,
With
I want to be with
yeah.
my kids. The thing that I want is to be with them, not to be apart from
Yeah.
them. So, I think it and for some people, they need that time apart. Like, great.
Yes.
But for
Yeah.
me, like, I'm working, so I have the time away from them.
Right.
So when I have the ability to be with them, I wanna be with
Right.
them. And
Yeah.
that is okay. It's okay to not want what everybody else wants.
Well, it's so interesting, and I mentioned earlier about curating your social media feed. Like, I've actually unfollowed people who seem like they really are miserable parenting. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "I is everybody finding parenting this hard?"
Yeah.
Like, I get it, it's hard, believe me. I mean, I've got 6 of them, like, I get it, but
Yeah.
is anyone enjoying their kids? And I get that some people, that's their shtick
Mhm.
and that's their thing, but if like, for me, I was like, "This is actually depressing because 'cause I'm not seeing any joy in these like, that
Yeah.
she's not enjoying these kids, so I just don't want that in my feed, so
Yeah.
unfollow." And
Yeah.
that's okay too.
And it's important to curate that and to notice what makes you
Yes.
feel good and what makes you not feel good. And like I
Right.
said, for some people, you need that time away. Great.
Yes.
But for me, like I want to be around people and I want to be around my kids. And that
Yeah.
I think is okay.
Yeah, it is okay. It is okay, and it's okay if you want the again, there's just no judgment. Just make
Yeah.
sure you take what you need and like, yeah, I yeah, same. I just a vacation for my kids. And now I'm at the other end of it. I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't want to be that like middle-aged
Mm.
woman who says don't blink because it goes fast, but my god, people,
Yeah.
don't blink. Like you have no freaking idea."
Yeah.
You
Just
know,
flies,
like
flies.
oh, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But I
Crazy.
know but I know in those days, like, I didn't even do 1 day at a time. I did 20 minutes at a time. 20 minutes,
Yeah.
one won't be hungry, one won't be bleeding, one won't be like, what it was busy days, and I remember being like, "Wow, this is
Hard.
wow, am I
Yeah.
gonna get through this day?"
Yeah.
Right? Like, I do remember it. But yeah, now that I'm through it, it's like, "Whoa."
Aw.
Yeah, it's
It's
wild.
amazing.
It's
So is
wild.
self-care something that you teach your children to participate in? Like we talked about communicating with your kids, but is that something that you promote to
Yeah.
them?
Yeah, it very much is. And it's more around, I feel like, those of us who have been raising pandemic kids, like they were all like tweens and, early teens when that was all happening. I had one at university who got sent home and like,
Oh, yeah.
it was so, I mean, there is a lot of talk around sort of mental health and making sure you don't, if you're feeling overwhelmed. And I actually talk a lot about strategies with them and what we can do because okay, I'm going to say something that's might be wildly unpopular,
Okay.
but I almost feel like my kids and all the kids of their generation, because I see it with their friends, my nieces, nephews, stuff like that, they're almost like so equipped with the language. Like they'll say things like, Mom, I can't because I'm feeling a lot of anxiety about that. I'm like, that's not anxiety. You're nervous and that's normal.
Mm,
So I don't like, I feel like sometimes, and like one said, I don't think I can go to that because I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm like, that's not overwhelmed. So sometimes they are, I get it, and sometimes they're anxious and all of that, but scared is good. Like, do
Yes.
it scared. So I really try to define and help them through kind of the buzzwords they're seeing on TikTok and out
Mhm.
there, and they're so equipped with managing their mental health, which is excellent,
So
but
good, yeah.
also differentiating and being like, well, bud, I think we need to do this and we need to implement some strategies to get through it, not to
Mhm.
opt out of doing it. And yeah, so there's a lot of talk around strategies and using words appropriately because I do it's like people say, "Oh, I was so bullied." I'm like, "That's not bullying."
Yeah.
Like somebody said something mean to you once,
Yeah.
and I actually got called a bully not that long ago because I called somebody out on their BS and held them
Mm.
accountable.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Oh, you're being a bully." I'm like, "Wow. That's what you're gonna do? That's what you're gonna go to because I've
Yeah.
held you accountable."
Yeah.
So when people are misusing very big words like that, it makes me
Huge word.
very like, wow, we need to rein this in.
Mhm.
And it's like when people are like, oh, I'm just being so OCD. It's like, no, if you know somebody with OCD,
Yeah.
making sure your house is tidy is not it. Like you're
Yeah.
downplaying what it really is. And I get they just mean that in jest. But so I do like my kids. Definitely, I do try like they, do their, activities that they love and we do manage mental health, and of course, we've gone through stuff,
Yeah.
mental health stuff. Like, every kid has their, like, moments, right? Um,
Totally.
but I do try to, we do talk a lot about strategies and things we can do, and I do think there's a place for medication, and I do think, like, all of these things, but I
Yeah.
think to your earlier point about communicating,
The communication's huge.
is an act of self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. And in being the president of your home, I think the communication is so important and giving kids the autonomy and the independence to really talk through their feelings and communicate
Yeah.
it with you is so important. And I think something to note too, like those are big buzzwords that you're right. They're hearing online, they're
Mhm.
seeing it in many different places, and it's important to talk about and it's important to note if they're feeling those things. But
Yep.
I think that we have almost lost, this might be controversial also, but
Yeah.
we've almost lost the ability to feel uncomfortable.
Right.
It's okay to
Yeah.
not feel great 100% of the
Yes.
time because it means
Yes.
we're going through like, there's always something uncomfortable before something great, and
Exactly.
that's okay. We have to work through it and be given the tools to work through it.
And I think that's such an important point, Ariane. And I think as parents, we need to always remind ourselves that we are not like we cannot snowplow, we cannot remove all the obstacles because
Yeah.
then when they experience being uncomfortable for the first time as adults, they don't know how to handle it. And
No.
they don't know that uncomfortable is where the growth happens and where
Yes.
the learning happens. And like we
Yeah.
know that as entrepreneurs. I mean, as soon as we're comfortable, we're not going anywhere,
Yeah.
right? You
What's
got to
wrong
get
here?
yeah, we gotta get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's where yeah, if you're not, standing on the edge, you're taking up too much space, right? Like,
Totally.
yeah, so, I mean, it's hard for us parents because we wanna clear the paths, we want things
Yeah.
to be easy, we don't want them to suffer, but there is a gift in failure. There
Mhm.
is gift in disappointment because then they have to deal with those feelings, and they have to learn from them, and it'll help them deal with the bigger stuff later.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. When do you think it's appropriate to start having these conversations with your children based on, like, age?
Like, soon as. I
Yeah,
mean, as
I
soon
think so
as,
too.
like, you think about your little guys and they're feeling my kids, like, they even made up a word when they were little, and they were excited for the first day of grade 1 or kindergarten, but they were nervous too, and they say nervous-sighted.
Oh, cute.
And I was like, "That is a good word." So, like, whenever, like, when we go to summer camp, I'm feeling nervous-sighted. I'm like, "Exactly, nervous and excited can coexist."
And that's a good
That's a
thing,
great
yeah.
way to be, nervous-excited. So,
I love
we've
that.
always kind of had these conversations, and I've
Mhm.
tried to normalize that being uncomfortable and being, and obviously too, if I did have a kid who was like I do have one kid who could not go to sleepovers, who was like a real like home kind of kid. In fact, I blamed it on her being the fourth. Even if she got invited to a birthday party as a little child, a sibling would have to go with her. So
Aw,
Posey or Spencer would have to go with just me because she wouldn't go. She was so used to always having siblings around that
yeah.
she wouldn't even go to a birthday party down the street for 2 hours. So we always had to send a
Oh.
helper along. And that was not me giving into that kid because I know that kid. That was me making an accommodation for an anxiety that was real.
I love
So
that.
you do have to know your kids, and treating your kids the same is treating them with inequality. They are different, and you need to
Yes.
parent them differently and know that they have different issues and different anxieties and different things that, some one of my kids could call me and be like, "Oh, I'm feeling this way." I'll be like, "I'm on my way." Another kid could call me and say, "I'm feeling this way." I'm like, "Okay, I think you got this. Let's
Yes.
try some strategies."
I'm a
You
firm
know?
believer that each kid is different, and
Uh-huh.
it's our job to know how they need support, and that's
That's
what we
right.
learned together. As you're raising them, you learn those things, and it
Yeah.
can change, of course, but you're right, every child is different, and no matter what, because as a mom of twins, I've done the exact same, like,
Right.
fed them the same meals, they've been on the same schedule, they're in the same household, and they still both need
You're
different
like,
things.
"How are you so
Yeah,
different? Same
it's quite
DNA."
incredible. Literally,
Yeah, literally.
it's incredible.
Yeah.
I have one more question for you,
Okay,
Julie. You have a book called Like a Mother.
I do.
Amazing title. I love this title because I think the word mother holds so much meaning and it can be different in different contexts and for different people. So, my question for you is what does like a mother mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's just sort of like a power statement as in and it can be sort of anything. Like for me, it's like strong as a mother or
Mm,
uh as sensitive as a mother, as loving as a mother, as powerful. Like it can be anything. And my subtitle, of course, is like a mother birthing businesses, babies, and a life beyond labels. So the book itself really is just full of like my parenting hacks, my life hacks, my entrepreneurial hacks. So
mm,
there is a little bit of something for in there for people like us who are like moms who are also entrepreneurs, but also people who are just entrepreneurs or just parents or just whatever.
mhm.
So I think there's a little and I try to do with humor and with practical takeaways and that sort of thing because you know what? We're like a mother.
Yes, I love it. I love it so, so much. Now, Julie, to end, I usually do a few quick rapid fire
Oh
questions. Are you okay
boy.
with that?
All
We can
right.
really get to know you. Okay, night owl or morning person?
I was always, 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 I'm naturally a night owl.
That's why you were making
Yeah,
labels till 2 a.m. I
exactly.
know it. Okay,
Yeah.
favorite movie?
Oh. Oh, okay.
The hard one.
I'm gonna have a few.
Okay.
I'm gonna say the original Wicker Man with Edward Woodward. There was a bad remake with Nicolas Cage.
Oh.
Um, and you know what? I really one that I absolutely love and just gets me every time is Brokeback Mountain.
Oh,
It's just such a unrequited love
amazing,
story. Yeah, I just
amazing.
love that one. Yeah.
Favorite food?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. So here's a funny fact about me.
Okay.
I don't love food the way most people love food.
Oh,
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah, which makes me not a very good cook.
Oh, that's
Because I
okay.
don't see like I feel like it takes a lot of time
It does.
and I think my friends who are foodies who are great cooks is because they are like, "Oh, look at it and it's beautiful."
They
And
enjoy yeah.
I don't really get it the same. Like if I'm on my own, I'll have a bowl of cereal, right? Like
Oh my gosh,
I
same.
know I'm
Okay.
terrible. Yeah, I was
Wow.
my poor mother. Like what she cooked every night, we were like, "No, no, no."
That's so funny.
I like it, and I'm
Yeah,
just not like most people I've noticed.
that's valid.
Yeah.
First thing you would do if you won the lottery today?
Oh. Oh, you know what? I would probably do all sorts of like annoying things that need to be done around this house. I've got this big house with all these kids in it, and like my pool needs new concrete, and I want to put
Mhm.
a new shower in the kids' ensuite. Like there's just all that stuff.
Yep.
And you know what? It's more like just having time to. Oh no, I'd definitely hire somebody to figure it all out.
There
Yeah,
you
that's what
go.
I'd
That's
do.
a good
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me today, Julie. Where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm on all the socials, but of course, you need to check out mabelslabels.com. But to find out
Yeah.
more about me on our site, if you go to mabelslabels.com/Julie Cole, you can order my book there. You can see where I'm talking, what I'm doing, where I'm at, blah, 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 all that jazz.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Ariana.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Your Cup of Joy. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. And if this episode resonated with you, or if you've been loving this show, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you are listening. Your support helps the podcast grow, it helps it reach more people, and it means the absolute world to me. So keep filling your cup with joy, and I will see you next week.